Hey there everybody, how are we doing today? So here we go. Excuse me. Here we go again, here we go. Okay, so you'd have to be mad to think Boris Johnson is the answer to Britain's problems. George Galloway. You know, if you can really see the image on this article from RT, from Ruptly, wow. Someone's apparently going down the road on a bike with, like, I think a Theresa May mask. It looks horrifying. Anyway, as Noel Coward sang, only mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the noonday sun, you could say the same about the Conservative Party, which just chose Boris Johnson to lead it. Getting his sole challenger, Jeremy Hunt's name wrong has become a national obsession. Mind you, he got his own wife's nationality wrong when he claimed she was Japanese. She's Chinese, on a mission to China, of all places. Can you imagine? You'd have to have been out in the noonday sun. Would certainly have to be English, and being mad would help. If you thought Boris Johnson was the answer to Britain's now rather critical problems. Britain's almost new Prime Minister is the perfect encapsulation of all of the vices and one of the virtues, to be fair, of the upper-class English elite, even though his grasp on the Englishness itself is tenuous. In many ways, Boris Johnson is sort of like the British Trump. A lot of Trump-like people are winning around the world. Because prior to Boris Johnson, Brazil had a Trump of their own in the form of, what was his name again? I'm trying to remember. It's right on the edge of my brain, damn it. So bad with names. Bolsonaro! Jair Bolsonaro. A very Trump-like sort of conservative elite. Boris Johnson strikes me as yet another one of those conservative elite types. Hell, he even has crazy hair like Trump. Did they all go to the same hairdresser or something? But the feeling that one is born to rule, buttressed by an expensive education at the world's most exclusive school, Eton, which has educated precisely half of all Britain's prime ministers, in Oxford, an effortless belief in one's racial and national superiority over Johnny Foreigner, including the upstart Americans, a contempt only blunted a little by noblesse oblige for one's own countrymen and women who either don't look like you, or even for those that just don't sound like you. In this sense, Boris Johnson is a throwback to former times. Not quite to the 19th century like his aide-de-camp Jacob Rees-Mogg, but at least to the middle of the 20th century. On the face of it, Harold Macmillan, the then British Prime Minister, was a straight-faced, slightly eccentric upper-class Englishman. That his wife was upstairs in bed for years with one of his parliamentary colleagues, Sir Robert Boothby, didn't seem to faze him. Or us, but then we weren't to know about it. So what you're saying is that he's a callback to 20th century conservatism. And that's a bad thing. How? Sure, civil rights abuses, but that wasn't necessarily a matter of conservatism so much as a matter of culture. Everyone tries to make that to be a systemic problem, and ignoring the fact that it was really more of a cultural problem. What was considered culturally acceptable then versus now. You can't blame conservatism for that. At least certainly not wholly. And furthermore, saying that he doesn't support citizens that don't otherwise look or sound like him, is that the polite way of calling him a racist, since that's everyone's favorite word these days to throw at conservatives? Because that's what it sounds like to me. In the difference to the New Age, Boris Johnson has skipped the straight-faced bit, straight-laced bit. He has cuckolded his colleagues, even leaving cuckoos in their nests, has left a trail of lurid love life stories to make a thriller writer blush, and will likely bed down in Downing Street on Wednesday night with his 31-year-old girlfriend if the rest is just the same. Johnson is or has fashioned himself as an upper-class English eccentric, and will be hoping the difference is not dead amongst 21st century Britons. To be fair, it should be said that Johnson is as colorful as his predecessor, Miss May, was, bloodless. He is clever and quick-witted. You get what you pay for, Eton. Is well-read and is a good writer, too. He should be. He is Britain's most expensive newspaper columnist. Like his hero, Winston Churchill, he believes history will treat him kindly because he intends to write it. This article does seem a little biased against him, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, are you going to say Winston Churchill's evil now too? Almost everyone respects him to some extent. There was a funny story about Churchill, actually. He once visited the White House here in the United States, right? And there are several spooky stories about the White House, about people seeing apparitions of dead presidents, ghosts and stuff. So the story goes that Churchill visited the Lincoln Suite. That's where he was sleeping. And he saw the ghostly apparition of Lincoln standing near the fireplace. Rather than get scared, he just walks up to it and says, "Good evening, Mr. President. I believe you have me at a disadvantage." It's like the man had already seen so much that a ghost couldn't even scare him anymore. I don't think the man had any fear left, to be honest. Anyway, but if he's anything like Churchill, then maybe Boris Johnson would actually be a good thing. Oh, but I forgot. In this day and age, conservatives are evil. Yeah, we're so evil. We're so evil. He's also possessed of a brand of courage, the kind of courage that showed in the charge of the Light Brigade at the Battle of Balaclava in the Crimean War. There's a battle called the Battle of Balaclava. I thought that was just the thing you put on your head. He led the Tory Brexit campaign from the front, and unlike the Light Brigade, he emerged the winner. He has come back from terrible setbacks and humiliations. His baggage hangs about him. Unable to be shaken off, a British citizen languishes in an Iranian jail as a result of his lazy, slovenly approach to his briefings. A non-existent garden bridge stands in his name in London. It cost the taxpayer over $37 million, though it was never built and never will be. He has insulted half the world personally, calling the French turds, calling the Turks an unmentionable name, despite being part Turkish by heritage. He even declared that he would not visit some parts of New York. He was a joint UK-US citizen at the time, because of the high probability of bumping into Donald Trump. If he did, because he didn't tweet that, he'll be hoping now that President Trump didn't hear that one. His sure touch on the Muslim world he demonstrated when he called half of them, the women, letterboxes. Good luck on your first tour of the Islamic world, Boris. He described black people as pickaninnies, though he liked their watermelon smiles. Good luck in Africa, Boris. Like Harold Macmillan, Boris Johnson sees himself as Donald Trump's missing brain, and sees Britain as Greece to America's Rome, a land of learning, sophistication, and culture firmly fastened to the rectum of brute American power. He's the wisest fool in Christendom. Poor Boris, he doesn't realize that both empires are history. Yes, but they were extremely successful in their time. Very, extremely successful. Not only that, but when you say America's Roman, you're just not kidding. We have a lot, culturally we are very Romanesque, very Hellenic. But are all the complaints about Boris Johnson is about, oh, he said this mean thing once, he did that mean thing once, which I admit could hurt his foreign policy, but I do recall that people's issue with Trump during the 2016 election was very similar. And did it matter? No. No, it did not. Because mean words don't matter. All that matters is whether or not they're able to do the job. Can Boris Johnson do the job? I believe he can. So who gives a shit about what he said once? Oh, he said mean words. Let's not elect him. Let's pick the circus clown instead. And in our case, the circus clown was Hillary Clinton. Bottom line is, I think Boris Johnson will do right by you guys, for the most part. Although if his foreign policy ends up being as hideous as Trump's, well, I got just two words for you. Or 3. Fuck that shit. Anyway,